Welcome to Episode 4 of Des Moines Backstage, the Central Iowa Theater Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Bocart. Today we sat down with Rocco Contini, Kirsten Brown, and Angela Lampe, who are all involved with the Des Moines Community Playhouse's production of West Side Story, which runs October 7th through the 30th at the Des Moines Playhouse. For more information on this production, you can visit dmplayhouse.com. My co-host this episode is Craig Peterson. This episode was recorded on September 26th at the Des Moines Playhouse. Now, let's go backstage.
Des Moines.
Des Moines.
Des Moines. Des Moines. Des Moines.
Des Moines Backstage.
Backstage.
Des Moines Backstage.
Des Moines Backstage.
Des Moines Backstage.
The Central Iowa.
The Central Iowa.
The Central Iowa
Theater Podcast.
The Central Iowa Theater Podcast.
The Central Iowa Theater Podcast.
Des Moines Backstage.
The Central Iowa Theater Podcast.
Des Moines Backstage.
Des Moines Backstage, the Central Iowa Theater Podcast.
Welcome to the Des Moines Backstage Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Bocart. Today we are speaking with the West Side Story cast and crew of the Des Moines Playhouse. My co-host for today is Craig Peterson. Welcome, Craig.
Thank you.
We have three people here, two actors and one of the crew, or costume designer, I guess. So if you guys want to go ahead and introduce yourselves, that would be very beneficial.
Great. I'm Kirsten Brown, and I'm going to be playing Maria in West Side Story.
Great.
I'm Rocco Contini. I'll be playing Tony.
Angela Lampe, costume designer.
Wonderful. How's everybody doing today?
Super duper.
Wow.
Awesome. Thanks for letting us come to you and do this. Really appreciate it. Really excited to see the show, honestly. So right off the bat, obviously the show's opening here, next week? A week from this coming Friday, I believe.
Correct.
That's right,
Yeah.
October 7th.
Yep. Yeah, you're right.
So,
Yep.
big question. Are you ready?
I think so.
Yeah?
Still definitely in the final cleaning stages of everything. But, with being able to be on the stage and a lot of the big set pieces coming together, using a lot of the costumes that Angie's already put together, everything is very much right where it should be.
Yep.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Well, for probably the two people listening that don't know about West Side Story, if you guys could give us just a little synopsis about kind of what it's about and, how big of a cast it is, things like that.
Yeah, so it's, I think there's about 35 people in the cast.
33.
Excuse me. But it's really the Romeo and Juliet story kind of placed in New York City. And so I play Maria, which is kind of that Juliet character. And
then Tony is the lovable scamp. No. But he's the New Yorker. She's the Puerto Rican. So there's the colliding families of the 50s kind of style. What's the word I'm looking for? Conflict. And they just love at first sight and overcoming all those obstacles of familial differences.
I have to say, you get to sing my favorite musical theater song of all time.
Is it Maria?
It is Maria, yeah. Yeah, that's you're so lucky to get to sing that.
I will be sure to not screw it up then.
Well, yeah, I'll be there opening night,
Awesome.
so we'll be there to listen to it. So I had a question for Angie then. So you guys are setting it during the 50s then, right?
Yes,
Awesome.
1950s teens, which I think is a really fun take on the Romeo and Juliet story. To do it with these kids, it's so much more focused on the kids as opposed to the adults and the warring families. So
That's
it's a
true.
Beautiful story.
So are you using any vintage clothes, or is it all kind of new stuff?
No vintage clothing in this at all, I don't believe, unless you count shoes from last season. But
So we go vintage
no,
for
it's
1 year back.
It's all new. Vintage clothing is too fragile in a big dance show like this. So all of this is new, built from scratch. Pretty much all the dresses. So
and so much of the 50s style, at least for the males, hasn't really changed that much from then till now.
not radically. I
Right.
mean, there's a little bit of a difference, but it's nice that I can still use classic Levi's and Converse tennis shoes.
Right,
That's
exactly.
fantastic.
Those are
Thank
easy
you,
to
Levi's
find.
and Converse, for not changing. But a lot of T-shirts, a lot of casual stuff, a lot of things that kids back then would wear, and that's the time when casual clothes really came about, was in the 1950s. So the T-shirt actually became a garment then. So we're seeing
As opposed to just like an undershirt.
Exactly.
I didn't know that.
I didn't either.
I learned something.
The more you know. Well, Craig, do you have any questions? You're sitting there very politely.
Yeah, well, you mentioned a little bit about the dancing. I'm interested to hear about how some of the styles of dance that are incorporated into the show, and how I've been in a Carla Cash show, and I know that those dances can be pretty exciting. So
and for those of you listening, Carla is the director. We didn't mention her earlier.
Director, choreographer. Well, we don't get to dance very much. We just do the dance at the gym.
Yeah.
And it's pretty much straight the original choreography with the little snap going on. But everybody else is just doing some crazy stuff. And so Carla obviously choreographed it. Aaron Besser is the assistant choreographer who's been helping clean it. And who else? Chris. What is Chris's last name? Oh, I just forgot.
Chris Bernard.
Thank you. That was embarrassing. Chris Bernard, who's a student of Drake, has been helping with the fights and cleaning all the fights and lifts and all that. So it's just been very intense and intricate and very impressive to watch.
So how do you guys... Oh, go ahead, Angie.
Well, I just want to jump in and say this is one of 2 musicals where you use the original choreography. Jerome Robbins' choreography comes with this. The other musical is Fiddler on the Roof. So that's what she's really kind of recreating, adapting somewhat, but you really stick to the true thing. And that's one of the exciting things about doing West Side Story, is getting, because Jerome Robbins is one of the biggest names in theater as a choreographer and as a director.
I didn't realize that some shows came with choreography.
Those are the only 2.
You're not allowed to do this show unless you do it in the Jerome Robbins style.
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
I'll be darned. Well,
It's jazz and ballet, some blues and swing in it as well. So it's a lot of fun.
The mambo.
Exactly. A lot of fun, different dance styles all encompassed.
Now, did the movie have that choreography as well?
Yes.
So we can say if you've seen the movie and you loved the choreography, definitely come to the show because you'll see all of it.
The West Side Story movie, the West Side Story movie really is the musical from On Stage. They pretty much took all the same people that created that musical and transferred them to the movie.
Well,
some changes in actors,
anymore.
but like costume designer, Arthur Lawrence, Jerome Robbins, all those guys, same thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about you guys' process in terms of finding your characters. I know some people have a very specific process, maybe before rehearsals start or during rehearsals. So if you could elaborate on that a little bit, that'd be interesting to hear.
Yeah, I think what I love about the character of Maria is just the contrast between Act 1 and how she is. She's very young, very naive, very hopeful about everything. And then Act 2 comes and that she kind of takes a shift and kind of darkens as a character and matures. And I think that is really a fun experience. I mean, fun's kind of a weird way to say that, but it's a great experience for me to be able to play a character like that. And so, yeah, just getting into Act 1, she's very light, very bubbly. That's where the balcony scene with the famous Tonight song is, One Hand, One Heart. It's all of those beautiful songs. And then Act 2 ends with Maria singing, I Have Love and A Boy Like That, which is just a very tragic and devastatingly beautiful song. And so I really enjoy kind of that experience and journey through the show.
She has a good arc, as they say.
Exactly.
Which is good. It wouldn't be interesting if she did.
Right. And with Tony, I don't know. I guess every time I do a show, this might be cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, but it's just kind of how my brain works. I end up thinking of them as real people. And I try to think of, I don't know, I guess in my head, Tony's kind of become like, for me being 27 and him obviously being younger, he's like this younger brother in my brain. And so like, how would this younger version of me or this younger person kind of feel when he first falls in love, seeing that girl, seeing that person that you finally realize, oh, that's love. So it's like, I kind of try to think of him as this like super just smiley guy, and then obviously things get a little heavier right at the end of Act 1 with the Rumble. And so just kind of playing with who I think, if Tony was real, how would he react to these things, I guess is kind of my quote-unquote process.
Weird. Well, I feel like that's a good one. I feel like that's kind of what you should be doing if you're an actor thinking, what would a real person do in
Right.
this situation?
Because I don't want it to come off as fake. So it's like, how would a real person do this?
Is it hard playing somebody that's so much, that's in high school? I assume neither of you are in high school.
Correct.
Anymore.
Well, Carla and I talked about it. We decided Tony was probably somewhere between 19 and 21, actually. So maybe a little older than high school, but still pretty naive. And I teach high school. So, so that's kind of hard to like go back to that mindset.
Yeah.
That kind of teenager.
Well, you get lots of inspiration from watching your students.
Truth.
Is that, do you really watch them closer now to kind of?
Honestly, yeah, I do. Like I kind of just out of the corner of my eyes, like, how do they interact with each other, or when they're flirting with each other? I'm like,
oh yeah, because it's totally different. Because I feel like when you're watching little kids, or not little kids, but children experience those things, you have to remember it's always most things they're experiencing is the first time they've experienced it, so they don't have any preconceived notions about how talking to a girl's gonna go.
Right, and so it's just really funny. It's almost, I feel like I'm using them as some sort of psychological study, but
don't tell them.
No, it works. It never works.
Yeah,
exactly.
I'm just, as far as, how vocally strenuous are these roles for you guys, and what do you guys do to prepare yourselves for that type of activity?
Well, I feel like we both actually have pretty speaking heavy careers. I feel like we have to talk a lot in our day-to-day, which is kind of...
What do you do?
I work with Des Moines Public Schools as a social worker within special education.
Wow.
So,
yeah,
cool.
So we're both like always interacting with people and trying to communicate. So we end up using our voices a lot throughout the day. And so there's I have a water bottle right over there and it never leaves my side.
Got my hot tea with me.
There you go. It's a lot of... And then, but we're both... You're classically trained, aren't you? Yeah, we're both classically musically trained, so...
Great, so you know how to take care of your instrument and everything, and I'm sure you do.
Maria's part has a lot of very high notes, and so after I was cast in this role, I did spend a little bit of the summer working on getting my higher range back.
Well, and also
better
just,
shape. So.
Just through the excitement of the show, I'm sure there's a lot of yelling and... just being loud, and you have to know how to do that correctly so you don't damage your...
And thankfully, Tony doesn't like really yell until the very end.
Right, yeah, he's pretty
chill.
Yeah.
And then the ending is he falls apart. But so I can just kind of throw it all away at the end of the night and then go to bed.
So have you guys done stuff with the Playhouse before, or is this your first show?
I was in Rock of Ages this past summer, but that was my first show.
So still fairly new.
Yeah, and this is my first production.
Wow. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
I know Craig's done things here. I've done a couple of things here, so welcome.
And are going to be doing something.
Well, yeah, this isn't about me, but yeah, Willy Wonka, come see it in December.
Little plug.
Yeah,
Plug never hurt anybody.
Exactly right. Well, for the people that are listening to this that aren't quote unquote theater people, what's the wow factor of the show? Like when you leave the show, what's the one thing that you're gonna say, like, oh my gosh, I couldn't believe this? Is it the dancing, the singing? Is it the cool set or the lights?
The costumes is definitely...
Yeah, I was just like, you gotta say the costumes.
Angie's a little biased there.
I don't know. Honestly, it's just going to be completely different for every single person.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because Kirsten and I both come from a musical background.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like we were both kind of drawn to the score and the music itself. And then some people are more interested in the theater, the acting, the set. And some people are, that are very artistic and visual are going to love the colors that Angie's put together. So it kind of just depends on the people.
I feel like if you're just a fan of just music, I mean, this is
great.
Some of the greatest music of the 20th
Well, I was going to say, this is one of
this
those soundtracks that you can enjoy just as much listening to it at home without ever seeing the show.
Exactly.
I mean,
And this is one of the best musicals ever, I think.
Oh,
and
yeah.
and for me, I think it's got one of the most beautifully tragic endings.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I love that it's not a happy ending.
Exactly. It is just the way it's written. It's so beautifully done. So that's
I think
my favorite part.
The fact that symphonic orchestras play the West Side Story
True.
suite just because that music is so beautiful. Is a testament to the music itself.
Yeah, it's
Not
not
every musical has that.
it's not a typical just like boom chick
Right.
type of
I
Broadway.
remember talking to my mom when I first told her that I was going to play Tony. And she's like, what are some of the songs? I know that I know the show. And I just started listing off the songs. And she was like, oh, that's from West Side Story. That is too? And I was like, Tonight, Maria, all these things. And she was like, I remember all this stuff from when I was a kid. And I kind of just didn't even realize it was from the show. I just knew it as a song.
There's so many famous songs that they stand on their
alone.
own. They're almost standards.
Yep.
It's and you have obviously Stephen Sondheim worked on it, and Leonard, is it Bernstein or Bernstein?
Yes.
Yes. That's a debate. But yeah, those two together, I mean, if you're a musical theater fanatic, even a little bit, you'll want to come see the show.
For sure.
And yeah, so how many people did you say were in the show, Leanne? 33? Wow, that is a big group of people to put on the stage, and in your case, to fill up dressing rooms.
And Angie is rocking it.
Beautiful.
So good. Beautifully vibrant colors. The girls have been using a lot of their skirts already, and they, I'm assuming, are all constructed by...
Oh, those crinolines, no, I bought those on Amazon.com.
Oh, okay, good.
The dresses that go over top, those I made.
Yeah, those you made, but everything that they've been using is... Angie has made sure that it's either made well or is of high quality, because they've been using them.
They have
and
to
they're already still in very good shape, so it's awesome.
That's great that you've been able to rehearse in your costumes, because I know that makes a big difference, especially when you're dancing
or literally getting the shoes of the character.
Yeah, they've had their shoes for a while.
For quite some time.
That's a big deal.
Exactly. Well, I saw some of the publicity photos that you were there, and just those were absolutely amazing. So I know if the show's even half as good as those are, then wow.
So that was just a hint. So
yeah, those were fantastic though. Like all you guys' legs were perfectly straight out, most of you. And
yeah, those guys. That was a really impressive shot of the boys, actually.
Yeah, it was. I was like, I'm gonna see that. Like, I mean, I'm coming to the show anyway, but that made me really want to come see it. So I wish it was opening this Friday instead of next Friday.
I'm good with the week. Yeah. I'll take it.
Yeah. So I guess when you guys are rehearsing, at least for me, that I always have to have like one thing at the forefront of my mind, like to focus on, like when I'm on a show, where it's not just like remembering my lines, but it's like, what's my one thing that I have to remember the whole time? So I know that's kind of a hard question, but what's one thing that when you're on stage, you're always trying to focus on?
Honestly, with Tony, it's that sense of innocence that he has. Because when I was a teenager and when I was younger, we had some family drama from when I was younger, so I never really got to experience a lot of like the innocent part of being a teenager. And so that's actually really difficult for me to connect with sometimes. So that's kind of always on the forefront, like the electricity of love being fresh and new and being young and all that stuff that's kind of always right there on the forefront of my brain.
That's good.
Say mine is similar, just constantly being in that mind, because Maria is supposed to be, somewhere between 16 and 17 years old. And so kind of putting myself back to like, oh, what was it like with my first boyfriend in high school, and like getting into that mindset, and that, everything is huge and having that huge, like, oh, this is the end of the, end all be all.
Everything's a big deal.
Having it always be at that level of excitement, is something that I always just try to be cognizant of, because that's very much a part of who she is, especially at the beginning of the show, but that still carries into the end as well. So
well, and you can argue the story wouldn't happen without either of you having those two attitudes.
Exactly.
Right. Either, because if you weren't innocent and if you weren't crazy girl experiencing love for the first time, then arguably the story would not happen.
Yeah, it would flatline.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
It's that intensity of like the knowledge of being an adult and trying to connect with that crazy inner teenager that we all have. So
yeah, 19 and 20 is probably the most awkward age, because like you have friends that are adults, but then you still have friends that are in high school, and you have to completely change who you are as a person to interact with those two.
Either of them, yeah. That's true, actually.
Yeah. That's how Craig feels. We're good friends, and he's 10 years older than me, so I have to act much more mature when I hang out with him than when I hang out with...
Absolutely not.
Yeah, that's true. I have to dumb it down a little bit.
We're talking about the guy who wanted to put googly eyes on the
microphone.
The microphone.
Still gonna happen. Well, hey, thank you guys for sitting down and talking with us today. Really appreciate it. Show again opens October 7th, runs through the 30th. This says 2017 here, but I believe it's of this year, 2016.
Yes.
That's okay. So 7:30 shows Wednesday through Saturday, 2 p.m. on Sunday. We can get tickets at the box office, right, or at dmplayhouse.com.
Yep.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
Any last thoughts before we go?
Definitely just come see the show.
Yeah,
it's going to be a good time.
I think a lot of people are going to come to the show.
Yeah.
A lot of people love this show, and
Beautifully
a lot of people will be here to support you guys, which is huge. So
awesome.
That's going to be
Look forward to seeing everybody then.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Take care.
You.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Des Moines Backstage. Please subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes, or wherever you get your podcasts. My favorite app is the Pocket Casts app. Also, if you'd like us to feature your next production as an episode of Des Moines Backstage, you can send us a message on our Facebook page. Thanks for listening.
Des Moines.
Des Moines.
Des Moines. Des Moines. Des Moines.
Des Moines Backstage.
Backstage.
Des Moines Backstage.
Des Moines Backstage.
Des Moines Backstage.
The Central Iowa.
The Central Iowa.
The Central Iowa
Theater Podcast.
The Central Iowa Theater
The
Podcast.
Central Iowa Theater Podcast.
Des Moines Backstage.
The Central Iowa Theater Podcast.
Des Moines Backstage.
Des Moines Backstage, the Central Iowa Theater Podcast.